Hi, this is Michael of the Round No.1 YouTube channel, and I want to take a few minutes to break down the conversation surrounding TNA Impact's debut on AMC in the United States. Because right now, fans and TNA talent are living in two completely different universes when it comes to expectations. Now, here in Canada, before Thursday Night Impact airs on Sportsnet, we get TNA in 60 minutes. This is a nostalgia block of archival footage. Now, 2 weeks ago, I tuned in late and caught Motor City Machine Guns versus Beer Money from a match about 15 years ago. And honestly, that match looked better than anything TNA has produced in the last 6 years. That's not an exaggeration, that's the reality. Which brings me to Eric Bischoff's comments about the AMC debut. On this podcast with Conrad Thompson, he flat out said the production itself was so poor. And he's not wrong. Then you have Moose on social media firing back at a podcaster and basically telling fans they have no right to critique production quality at all. He came off as dismissive, confrontational, and completely out of touch with the people who actually watch the product. Now here's the thing. TNA's production 15 years ago in high definition and even 20 years ago in 4.3 looked cleaner, sharper, and more professional than what we're getting today. That's not nostalgia talking, that's just facts. I didn't watch the whole entire AMC debut because starting a 2-hour show at 9 p.m. on a weeknight is insane to me. But I did hear Dixie Carter made an appearance and got booed. And honestly, I felt embarrassed for her because here's what fans forget. When TNA was under Jeff and Jerry Jarrett, the company was barely surviving. They had enough money for a handful of episodes. It was Dixie Carter, working behind the scenes at the time, who convinced her family to fund the company. Without the Carter family, TNA doesn't make it out of year one. And from the Jarrett era through the Carter era, TNA's production was elite. Say what you want about creative, the show looked big league. Now, the production issues didn't start until Anthem Sports and Entertainment took over. I said this back in early 2024 on Round No.1, and it's still true today. TNA's current presentation looks like low-grade HD with audio that barely clears the bar. Nothing they've released since then has changed that. And that's the frustrating part. TNA has the roster, the history, and a loyal fan base ready to support them. But when you debut on AMC and the show somehow looks worse than Impact Zone footage from 2009, that's a real problem. Fans notice instantly. Even former TNA producers like Eric Bischoff spotted the drop in quality the moment the broadcast started. So when Moose fires back at fans saying, "You don't wrestle, so your opinion doesn't matter," it's wild. Wrestling is built on fan reaction. You don't need to take a bump to know when the lighting looks cheap or the cameras look shaky. You just need eyes. It's like a chef saying you can't complain about burnt food unless you worked in the kitchen. No. If you're the audience, you get to react. That's the deal. And the funniest part, if the fans had praised the production, Moose would be retweeting it like a trophy. But the second somebody says, "Hey, this looks off," suddenly the fans are miserable and unqualified. If TNA wants to grow on AMC, they need to listen to the people watching, not argue with them. Fans aren't the problem. Ignoring them is. Now, before I get into the Trey Miguel situation with AEW and his return to TNA last week, I want to make one thing clear. It's perfectly fine to have an opinion without having every fact. People do it every day. What's not okay is presenting an opinion as fact or trying to silence others for having one. Now let's talk about the Rascalz. The Rascalz, you have Zachary Wentz, Trey Miguel, Desmond Xavier, who went as Wesley in NXT, and Myron Reed. Now they officially left TNA and signed multi-year deals with AEW in early January 2026. And the timing couldn't have been more dramatic. Like, this signing came days before TNA's big AMC debut in the United States. Now, according to Fightful and many other outlets, TNA did attempt to keep them, but AEW came in with a stronger financial offer and more appealing creative package. Now, shortly after signing with AEW, things took a strange turn for Trey Miguel. Number one, he announced he was stepping away from wrestling. Number two, reports surfaced that he had been released from AEW only days after signing. And number three, the Wrestling Observer claimed the decision was made, and I quote, above Tony Khan's head, implying internal business politics. Meanwhile, the other three Rascalz remain with AEW. Now, here's where things get messy for me. The Wrestling Observer claimed that a decision was made above Tony Khan's head. Doesn't make much sense on the surface. Tony Khan is the majority owner of AEW. There isn't supposed to be an above his head. But then, last week, The Hollywood Reporter published an article that shed new light on AEW's ownership structure in the middle of Warner Bros. Discovery's sale. The article confirmed that AEW will not be moving to Netflix once the WBD sales finalize. Netflix is acquiring Warner Bros., the movie studio, and the streaming assets, including Turner Classic Movies and HBO, both television and streaming, which I'm personally excited about. Big fan of TCM. Hopefully it becomes a live stream channel on Netflix. However, the article also revealed something Tony Khan has never publicly acknowledged. Warner Bros. Discovery owns a minority stake in AEW valued at around 10%. Now, that 10% stake will not transfer to Netflix. Instead, it will remain with the new company being formed to house the remaining WBD television assets such as CNN, TBS, TNT, and others, which will operate under Discovery Incorporated. Now, the stake was so small and insignificant to WBD that they never mentioned it publicly, but Tony Khan also never disclosed it himself, insisting repeatedly that he alone calls the shots. This new information raises legitimate questions about how much influence WBD may have had or still has in AEW's decision making, and it certainly makes the Wrestling Observer's claim about decisions being made above Tony Khan's head a lot more complicated than it first appeared. But really, what can Warner Bros. Discovery actually do to AEW when they only own 10% of the company and AEW's television contracts are already locked in? And what authority does WBD have to decide who can or cannot appear on AEW programming? Now, a lot of fans assume that WBD's minority stake gives them power to ban talent like Trey Miguel because of old social media controversies. That assumption comes from a familiar situation, the Briscoe brothers. Now, when Tony Khan purchased Ring of Honor, he signed the Briscoes, but WBD executive reportedly told him they could not appear on AEW television due to past comments made by one of the brothers. They were allowed on ROH because it streamed on Honor Club and it wasn't tied to TNT or TBS. Then tragedy struck in 2023 when Jay Briscoe passed away in a car accident that also claimed another life. His daughters survived, thankfully. AEW wanted to air a tribute show, and reports said WBD initially pushed back. What made the situation even stranger was that WBD never publicly commented on it. Weeks later, the tribute aired anyways, and Mark Briscoe was signed to AEW. To this day, nobody outside the room knows exactly who at WBD made those decisions or why. Tony Khan has only said that the executive responsible is no longer with the company, but now with the Trey Miguel situation, it feels like somebody else, either at WBD or even within AEW, has the ability to override Tony Khan again. And that raises a bigger question. Why are some controversies treated as deal breakers while others are ignored? Let's look at a few examples. Sammy Guevara once made an extremely inappropriate comment about Sasha Banks years before joining AEW. Tony Khan suspended him and required sensitivity training, but WBD never stepped in or objected to him being on television. The Young Bucks, EVPs of AEW, also had old social media posts containing homophobic language. Again, no intervention from WBD, and no public disciplinary action from AEW. Yet the Briscoes were banned from AEW television for comments one of them apologized for repeatedly over the years, and now Trey Miguel is reportedly being blocked for something from his past as well. Why the inconsistency? Then there's the current situation involving Jim Ross and Devon. Allegations have resurfaced about past racist behavior in WWE, and while those claims are part of wrestling history, neither WBD or AEW has taken public action or addressed the matter directly. It's another example of how selective the outrage seems to be. The core issue here isn't whether past comments should or shouldn't matter, it's the inconsistency in how they're handled. If WBD truly has veto power over talent, even only with a 10% stake, then AEW is not as independent as Tony Khan has always claimed. And if WBD doesn't have that power, then somebody inside AEW is making decisions and hiding behind the idea of network pressure. Either scenario is messy. The Briscoe situation showed that WBD can influence AEW's talent decisions. The Trey Miguel situation suggests that influence may still exist, but the lack of action in other cases involving Sammy Guevara, the Young Bucks, or even long-standing allegations around Jim Ross makes the whole thing feel based on a random choice or personal whim. And that's the real problem. Fans don't expect perfection, they expect consistency. If AEW and WBD are going to take a moral stance on who appears on television, that stance needs to be applied evenly, not selectively, not quietly, and not only when it's convenient. Right now, it feels like nobody knows who's actually making these decisions. And until AEW or WBD clarifies their roles, these situations will keep on happening. Now let's talk about next weekend's Royal Rumble taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. We know for a long time that the 2026 Royal Rumble would be held there, and that WrestleMania 2027 is also heading to Saudi Arabia. Now, I'm not bringing up this to criticize WWE for running shows in Saudi Arabia. They've been doing that for years. The point is simply this. There is zero excitement around this year's Royal Rumble. Back in 2024, I said that Sami Zayn was the most logical pick to win the 2026 Royal Rumble. He had the fan support across North America and Europe. He was positioned perfectly on the roster, and yes, his Syrian heritage made him a symbolic figure for a region where Saudi Arabia has been investing in heavily. Whether people agree or not, that kind of soft power storytelling absolutely fits the WWE's playbook. But now Sami isn't even in the Rumble. He's in a WWE championship match against Drew McIntyre, who just won the title. And let's be honest, that usually means Sami is losing. The entire Sami wins the Rumble excitement evaporated the moment they announced this match. And if Sami isn't in the Rumble, who is winning the men's match? I generally have no clue. The women's Rumble is just as unpredictable, not in a fun way, but in a WWE hasn't built anyone up enough to care way. For the first time in years, I'm going into a Royal Rumble with zero expectations and zero excitement. I don't know if other fans feel the same way, but WWE hasn't made this year's Rumble feel magical. There's no buzz, no momentum, no must-see energy. And honestly, it makes me worry about WrestleMania 2027. If the Rumble, the event that usually sets the tone for the entire road to WrestleMania, feels this flat, what does that say about the spectacle they're planning for next year? Now, about the stadium in Saudi Arabia that's nearing completion for the 2026 Royal Rumble. A lot of people online are complaining about how fast it was built. I don't have the official construction timeline, but the claim floating around is that the venue went from early stage development on January 5th, 2026 to nearly complete by January 25th, 2026, which is today. That's where the outrage is coming from. But here's the thing. Fast construction doesn't automatically mean unsafe construction. People are comparing this to North American standards, which isn't a fair comparison. In North America, large-scale venues take years because of zoning laws, environmental reviews, union regulations, and seasonal limitations. In other places of the world, especially where governments invest heavily in rapid infrastructure, timelines can be dramatically shorter. Look at Toronto, Ontario, for example. Here we have the Rogers Centre, formerly known as Skydome, which is a permanent multi-purpose stadium that took 2 to 3 years to build and is still standing strong 40 years later. Then we also have Rogers Stadium, which is a temporary large-scale outdoor venue that was completed in just 9 months. It's designed to be partially dismantled, winterized, rebuilt, and eventually demolished after its 5-year lifespan. That's the nature of temporary venues. Fast to build, fast to modify, fast to remove. So when people panic about the Saudi stadium being built quickly, they're missing context. We don't know whether this venue is permanent, semi-permanent. We don't know if it will be partially assembled later this year or how long it's intended to last. What we do know is that Saudi Arabia has poured billions into sports infrastructure for their venues, whether temporary or permanent, and they have consistently met international safety standards for events like WWE, boxing, and major concerts. So it might be hard for people to hear me saying this, but from everything I've seen, this stadium will be a safe, functional venue for WWE to run the Royal Rumble, and there's no credible reason to expect issues. Now, this brings me to the end of the show. I appreciate your comments, whether good or bad. Post them down in the comments box below. This is Mike of the Round No.1 YouTube channel. I'll catch you later.